I grew up on a farm. My mother and father went to Gettysburg College. I tell people that I was a legacy. They had to take me there, you know. I did ROTC. When I went there, you had to take either physical education, and I was already playing football, and I knew I didn't want to go down to the gym 2 more days a week, you know, to play kickball, or this thing called ROTC. And I got to the end of the line, and I asked this guy, today I realize it's an E7, what is this ROTC thing? And he said, son, sit down here. It was a big deal, you know, to be something, you know, to be, you know, growing up on a farm and going to a little school and not being very distinguished either athletically or academically, to be an officer was a really big deal. I went through about 16 months of training before I went to Vietnam. I mean, I was very fortunate. I was about as well trained as you could make a 22-year-old guy before he had sent the war. I was then in this supply section as the assistant S4, and the supply sergeant came up to me and he said, Lieutenant Hardy, what size toe tag you wear? I said, toe tag? He goes, yeah, you know what toe tag's for, right? I said, yeah. I said, why? He says, here are your orders to Vietnam. But another sergeant on an operation got wounded up ahead of us in a firefight, and the Vietnamese said they couldn't get him back. And so part of the reason they couldn't get him back is because he had fallen over the rice paddy dike on the bad guy's side. You know, he was wounded, and his legs were shot up, and you know they didn't want to, you know, go over and get him. So I crawled up there and got him back and dragged him back, you know, to safety. I was sleeping out on my poncho liner at night, and I was laying there looking up at the sky, and I heard boom, 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 and I knew it was a mortar, but we weren't firing them. And then the first round hit, and I went diving back into that hole again, and we underwent this barrage, the likes of which I've never heard of before in Vietnam, because they were firing from Cambodia. We were right on the border, I mean, from here to that wall, you know. They were firing over onto us. They had plenty of ammunition. But this outpost there was nothing around it for maybe 1,000 yards in all directions. But under that fire, they moved a huge infantry unit up. We were all hunkered down in our holes, you know, and I was just thinking, if a mortar round comes through that little slot that I used, you know, I'm going to get blown to smithereens. And I was looking up through the hole, and all of a sudden, this fire started up from a million machine guns, and the little wall of the house just exploded right before my eyes. I looked at that, and just a million bullet holes came whooping through that thing. I was like, holy shit. When I went home after my first year, I extended, you know, to stay over there for another 18 months. And I was miserable for that month back home. When I came back to Pennsylvania, I was miserable. Oh, God, it was terrible. You know, nothing to do. People wouldn't have anything to do with you. You couldn't get a date, you know. No one would go out with you. I mean, it was just, it sucked. And I couldn't wait to get back to Vietnam. And when I got back, my Vietnamese unit had a party for me, you know, welcomed me back. I brought some stuff back from America. It was like coming home again. It was such an odd experience to feel so alienated from here, you know, and feel so welcomed, you know, back there. While I was in Vietnam, I decided I want to go to medical school, because we did these things called medical civic action programs. They still do them today. You come into a village someplace and bring a doctor or dentist or something, and they have sick call, basically, for the village. And my job was to take my unit and clear the village first to make sure it was safe. And so we clear the village, and then we'd set up a landing zone. They'd bring the helicopter in, the doc or the dentist would get off, and then I'd go in and watch what they did. And I was standing there one day watching this dentist pull teeth. I mean, there was a line like a football field long of people waiting to get their teeth pulled. And he had a syringe, I'll never forget it, it had the ring on the thing like they had today. And he would just numb them up and pull that tooth out and put a piece of gauze in there and give them a little paper packet of Motrin or something, you know, and send them on their way. And they were so appreciative of that. I couldn't believe it. And I've been there for more than a year, and I thought that I was a pretty good advisor. You know, I thought I was doing the right thing, building those impregnable outposts and all that kind of crazy stuff. And I thought, in one afternoon, this guy has done more good than I've done in a year. I said, I got this thing wrong somehow. And that's when I started thinking about medicine. I had a total of 22 years. So I had 5 as a infantry officer and then 17 or so as a doc. It's that there is a really small group of Americans, right now about 1%, who have stepped forward to serve their country. And you need to appreciate what they do. Even if you don't agree with the policy or the war, don't take it out on the person who has been trying to do that. We signed up to serve, and we'll go where our country sends us. And I just ask that you honor their service.